Many people here were here for the first Miami Bitcoin conference. All right, cool. So what my talk's going to talk about is I was thinking about sort of this concept of where we are now and where we're going. And a great way to think about that is looking at this event, because I think it's an important event. And it encompasses a few of the themes that I think are important, just kind of things that I think in looking at, where are we right now? What is the state of this Bitcoin and blockchain world, and where are we going? And so in that, a few things come to mind. One is how the global economy has changed in a few ways. One being the way that they have become more accepting of this. How many people have seen the recent press from the World Economic Forum at Davos talking about blockchain? So it's a big topic there. It was a little bit of a topic last year, and this is increasing, and we've seen. So I was there. Bear with me if you were here on that first event as well. But it's worth taking a trip down memory lane. The very first Bitcoin, there was no blockchain events. It was all Bitcoin events. The very first Bitcoin event that I went to was out in Vegas. And I was dressed kind of like this. I think even a little more casual. And I walked in and I said, oh boy, this is way overdressed. So I kind of slid the jacket off. And the Miami event was some months after that. And I remember there's a bunch of buzz. People said, you see those guys in the front? They're venture capitalists. I mean, people couldn't believe it, that there was venture capitalists here. Couldn't believe that there was lawyers here. And if somebody handed a business card and it was from a real company, the first reaction would be like, do they know you're here? And usually the answer is no. And some of those people went and started their own companies. It is amazing to see how far we've come. I mean, we didn't really envision these huge companies that are all involved in this technology now. And so the global economy has changed in a couple ways. One, you have much, much greater understanding of this technology. And two, you have the continued things that Jeffrey was just talking about, these horrible monetary policies where they keep inventing new money from thin air, printing new money. And it's a house of cards. It was a house of cards in 2008, and since then things have gotten worse. There's all kinds of the same types of shenanigans that caused the 2008 collapse are still going on in full force. And we see the results. We've seen the results with the EU. We've seen what's happened in Greece, and Venezuela is one of the best examples. How many people have seen these? Somebody had a picture of about a stack of cash about this high, and they had a banana next to it, and they said, well, this is how much money you need in Venezuela. It's about $21, which is almost enough to buy a banana. Bananas are going for about $24 US there, apparently, and you need a stack of money this big. So currencies fail. That happens. It's happened many times in history. What's interesting now is that Bitcoin exists as an alternative, perhaps. And I think that as more currencies fail the world over, some of these people, and maybe eventually whole countries, will go and say this is an alternative. Because most of the countries in the world are at the whim of bad economic policy. There's only three kinds of countries in the world. There's the United States, EU, and countries that peg to mainly the United States. There's so it's those countries, and then there's the ones that peg to it, and then there's ones that try and do it on their own. None of those models are great. And the central bankers, I've politely said to central bankers that I've met before that, really your currency in many countries, when they're pegged to the US dollar, for example, they really don't have a currency. They have US dollars with a different picture on it. In Saudi Arabia, they have US dollars. They just call them rials. In the UAE, dirhams. It's a different person's picture, but they're pegged. They have no power at all to do anything for their currency, and that's probably wise, because people, particularly in the Middle East, who decide to do things for their own currency, find themselves declared terrorists very quickly and have a reign of democracy coming down on them in the form of bombs. So probably wise of them to keep that. I would too if I was threatened with. Bringing democracy is a very grave threat. So I'd probably do the same. But they really don't have any power. And then there's these poor countries, these tiny countries that try. I mean, if you go into the bank and you go to exchange currency, there's only 20 currencies at most. They don't do this in the US. Maybe here in Miami you see some places. But if you're traveling even to a place like Dubai, there's only 20 or so currencies that they even consider important enough. There's a lot of people that they have to trade to another currency to get to a real currency. They have to use something intermediate. Say, okay, I'm going to trade my currency for Thai baht, and now that I have Thai baht, yes, I can get a real currency like euros or something. So I think that a lot of these economies, or as economies fail, they're going to recognize that there are alternatives out there. And that brings us to an interesting point. This double-edged sword of this acceptance and understanding of the technology. With that comes misunderstanding, and with that comes drawbacks. Like, for example, this move to digital cash. It seems good at first for those of us who love this technology. It's like, great, they're moving towards digital cash. That's a step in the right direction. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's just a way to put. If digital cash is terrible, okay, and by the way, blockchains are terrible too, unless they are truly decentralized. The whole purpose of a blockchain is to be a statement of truth. That's all a blockchain is. It says what's true. I moved my $1,000 from here to here. I moved 5 Bitcoin from here to here. I have a land title. Whatever application for blockchain you're talking about, that's all a blockchain is. It's a ledger that says this is what's true, this isn't what's true. So when you have things like editable blockchains or centrally controlled blockchains, they're really not blockchains at all. Or even just countries saying, hey, we're going to move to digital currency. That's actually a step backwards, because what it does, it takes this technology and it guts the key, most important part of it, the decentralization, distributed nature of it, and all that's left is one person, and ultimately everything, whether it's a company or a country, usually decisions come down to one person. Ultimately, one person or a very small group of people have total control of it. So if you're in a country where they say, hey, great news, we're going to have digital currency, well, if it's just centrally controlled central bank currency that they make digital, all that does is enable them to have more power to seize it at will from you if they don't like your name or your political party, or you didn't pay your taxes to fund for all those bombs are expensive that we drop, bringing democracy. And so some of these things can actually be a step backwards. So that's what's interesting about this, is we see all these huge companies adopting this. It'll be very interesting to see what happens with keeping the core real technology, for example, with blockchain being truly decentralized and not controlled. That's absolutely key. Otherwise, we could end up in a worse situation. So in this, we have this whole kind of Bitcoin versus blockchain debate, which is sort of amusing and interesting. I never really thought of it that way. I believe in blockchain, the technology, and I also am a big believer in Bitcoin. I'm not a Bitcoin purist. I think there's a great place for some of these other coins, tokens, other applications. There may be things that Bitcoin is unable to do, or there's certainly things that will be sort of parallel to Bitcoin that will make sense. In my opinion, a lot of those are going to end up on the Bitcoin blockchain, because this conference is a very Bitcoin-centric conference, but there are other ones where they're more than 180-degree difference. They're totally focused on blockchain. Any mention of the word Bitcoin is kind of considered a dirty word. And I find that very interesting, because the first question you can ask is, well, what blockchain are you talking about? And a lot of times they don't have a great answer. So a lot of these blockchain apps that are coming along are, as soon as any value or anything of value is being done with them, they're absolutely going to be attacked. Bitcoin has been attacked far more than probably anything else in the history of computer science, and it's been analyzed in every way. Putting blockchain without really thinking, putting the term blockchain first as a buzzword I think is a crucial mistake. What other things can we sort of reflect on? I think another interesting thing that has changed over the last few years, and by the way, I think it was the first Miami Bitcoin conference that Ethereum was announced. It was announced at, and it didn't even come out until quite a bit later, I think a year and a half later maybe. It was also the day that Charlie Shrem got arrested. So there's a lot of history in this conference where interesting things have happened every year. So tonight you maybe have time to make history yourself, do something interesting that will make the papers. Just nothing, don't do anything Mo wouldn't do. Or maybe, I don't know if that's the best advice. But the community is still strong, and that's very interesting because you have, this question of, how do you lead something that's leaderless? Who are the leaders? Some people don't like that term at all. I consider leaders to be sort of companies that are funded, people who are doing important things, clearly developers, but also venture capitalists and others who are involved in that field of who the leaders are is growing quite a bit. But I'm encouraged that community is still pretty strong. In those early days, those of us who were there at the first Miami Bitcoin conference or the conferences before that, community was very, very, very strong. Everybody knew everyone. I think I remember going on LinkedIn and I linked anyone who had the word Bitcoin in there. I don't think anybody had blockchain in their title, but I linked all 50 people or so. And now if you go, there's I think last I checked was 40,000 people have the word blockchain in their name on LinkedIn. So all these new people are jumping in, but the community still remains strong, and I think that's important because we're going to have some fights ahead of us. Bitcoin isn't mainstream yet. It's still very, very, very tiny. It's a fraction of a major tech stock. I mean, Bitcoin has to go up to, 10,000 per coin to be the size of Apple, which is still not, Apple's very important, but it's still not the kind of might that you talk about with countries and things like that. Boeing and Lockheed, these companies have had single contracts that are 10 times the size of all the Bitcoin in the world. So we have a ways to go before and price is only one measurement. I know there's many other measurements, but we have a ways to go, and in that there's going to be some hurdles. There's going to be more regulatory issues. Central bankers are not going to go down without a fight. There's going to be more efforts to make fake blockchains and have centralized control and digital cash and these kind of things that are controlled by governments. And so community will be strong for that because it's important to keep that hardcore ethos about decentralization.
When the New York EFS came out on the stage with the big license, I don't hear anything about the Bitcoin Foundation and the fight they're doing. You're keeping rambling about the
yeah.
But I want to hear what the Bitcoin Foundation.
Well, I wasn't with the foundation at the time, but.
No, but you're the director today. I read your memo. I'm the only one fighting the big license in New York.
Yeah.
Where has been the
well, hold on. Chill out. This isn't a Trump rally or a Hillary rally. Calm down. Do you want me to answer you or not? You want to come up or you want me to answer you? All right. Okay, well, you can leave.
I'm a member of the foundation, and I haven't heard anything.
Okay. All right, so you want to hear about regulation. I am against.
About what the Bitcoin Foundation, you the director, is doing against the regulation in New York and in California, because the EFS is doing something, 2600 is doing something, ACLU is doing something.
Okay.
You're supposed to be our defender, and I don't hear anything on that side.
Yeah. All right. You're getting a little off of the topic that I had planned. The Bitcoin Foundation made a decision a while ago, before I ever even came, to get out of the business of lobbying and policymaking. So, sorry about that. I wasn't there. I wasn't part of it. For my part, I stood on this very stage and I said that Ben Losky is a corrupt liar. And the reason that I think he's corrupt is because of the way that the bit license was done in bed with the banks. I think it's a protectionist, horrible regulation. The Bitcoin Foundation, and again, this is before I was there, so, I certainly not here to be in a position of defending things that happened before I was there. Just for those of you who are not up to speed, I was executive director for about a year for the Bitcoin Foundation. I'm a board member now. I'm no longer executive director. The executive director, Lou, is here at this event. He may be in the audience. May hide now after this, but Lou Clausen is a good guy. We can only do so. There's only so much that can be done. The Bitcoin Foundation did respond with the largest most comprehensive response to the bit license, a 30-page response. It was done by Marco Santori, who's a leading lawyer. The time that he put into that and his staff put into that is, if you were to ask that to be done and pay his legal rates, you're talking about a very, very, very significant amount of money.
Do you know on March 30th in New York City, there is the Bitcoin license lawsuit going on. On March 30th, I will be the only one
Okay.
in the courtroom. I still haven't heard from you on one.
It's not the mandate of the foundation. There's policy groups. You should start a policy group if that's your thing. I'll join you if you want. It's a different mission than what the foundation. The foundation.
So the foundation role is to deal with the block size change, what the block size should be, or should it be about protecting all of us against the regulation? I mean,
Lobbying.
for you
Things change a lot. Things change over time. And I'm not. We can talk offline about it if you want to get into what the foundation is. The foundation was partly a victim of its own success. They had a lot of donations. Bitcoin went way up. Foundation had millions and millions and millions of dollars. Thought that the price was going to keep going. They spent a lot of money, overspent, and then they were hit with the double whammy of the price crashing and spending too much. After that, I came aboard in a turnaround situation to try and help out the situation. So, by the way, as a volunteer, I didn't get paid to do this. I did it because I thought that the organization was useful and there was a place for it. Now, the foundation, the other mistake that I think the foundation made when the foundation started, was the only organization in this space. So, certainly overpromised and underdelivered. Because it was the only organization, people expected the Bitcoin Foundation to do everything. Bitcoin is not centralized. That mistake, nobody has mistaken the Bitcoin Foundation for being, in charge of Bitcoin for quite a while. You have the ability to do just as you're doing, and great job. If you're fighting BitLicense, good for you. I hope that other people will help you. Like I said, I'll help you. But people can only do what they're able to do. All of the board members and me and the executive director are all volunteers. The executive director, in some ways, volunteer. But all of the board members and me, and during the time that I was executive director, the position was previously a paid position. I did it as volunteers. There's only so many hours in the day that people have. And the decision was made before I even came that, given the limited resources and at the time the price crash, that the foundation would not be fighting the lobbying battles because they were very, very, very difficult. The foundation is basically licensed. I mean, it is. It does have the nonprofit status where it is able to engage with regulators, but they just can't do everything. And if you put yourself in the position of me or someone else who's there, what exactly do you do? How do you do these things? Do I force somebody? Do I call up a member and say, you have to go and be at this meeting? Do I take even more time out of my day and my family and go down and do even more volunteer work to stand by your side in New York? I'll do that. But when you have an all-volunteer organization in an open source space, if you want to change, be the change. So if you're being the change, good for you, but it's not super fair, I think, to criticize people, particularly people who weren't even there, but to criticize people who are giving their time and donating their time. We did a DevCore event, so it's training the next generation of developers, for example. Was it the greatest event in the world? No. Was it a good success? Did it do good things for Bitcoin? Yeah, I think it is. And because the foundation was in such a high prominence position, I think it's easy to criticize and say, oh, well, that's all you did was this event and a couple other things. But that's a challenge when you have an open source space and all volunteer space. But I mean, I'll talk to you after about it. There's definitely a problem with regulation. And that's what I was just getting to. I think that there's going to be a fight that we should all be part of. And if there's an organization that you're part of or you start that is going to fight things like BitLicense, I'll be there with you. I think that took up our time. Sorry about the tangent there, but I think that's it. So thanks a lot. Appreciate your time. Have a good one.